Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast as we just finished up talking about JJ McCarthy and his injury. Another one of the rookie quarterbacks that so many fans are excited about is not off to a great start, as in New England right now, things are reportedly a little messy from training camp. Now, the Patriots are currently undergoing some joint practices with the Philadelphia Eagles as they're going to be facing off in their next preseason game against one another this upcoming weekend. And during these joint practices, oftentimes some of a team's flaws can come to light a little bit more. And that seems to be happening with the Patriots offense and specifically their offensive line. Now, there are a number of different issues that are baked into the conversation with the Patriots, because you look across the roster specifically on that offensive side of the ball, and it's not like there is an exceptional amount of talent by any means. I do think that Ramondre Stevenson is one of the upper end running backs in the NFL, but last year he struggled for the majority of the time that he played in, and then as soon as he started to sort of turn his season around, he ended up being out for the remainder of the year off of that hip drop tackle against the Chargers. So, he still has to sort of reestablish himself as one of the top backs in the NFL. The wide receiver room is largely, now with the additions of some rookies in Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, maybe we see some optimism coming out of this season, but still definitely no. And it's funny, the whole conversation that Matt LaFleur and the Packers were having of he doesn't really care about having the number one wide receiver on his roster and how he thinks that's a little bit overrated by the media, which could definitely be the case. But if you're not going to have a number one wide receiver, you need a lot of different options for players who can be twos and threes, and I don't think the Patriots even have that. It is a pretty lackluster group. So, I think that definitely is an issue. We have seen the Patriots struggle to get separation from their outside players over the course of the past couple years. But really for the Patriots, the biggest issue is that offensive line, which has been a problem for a couple years now. And it's why we saw by the end, Mac Jones went from, I know the Pro Bowl's a joke, but he had a good rookie season. And by the end of it, because of the immense amount of pressure that he was facing in, just seconds, it ultimately ruined him. He was unable to actually, drop back and get comfortable. And we're talking about Drake Maye here now in New England, where even if he doesn't start week one, Jacoby Brissett is supposed to be the number one option. Drake Maye, he's going to eventually get the keys to the offense. And when that's the case for somebody who coming out of college has a reputation of having poor footwork, and Maye has reportedly not looked all too good out of the under center look, that eventually you are going to have to take the training wheels off. And if it's just a disaster in front of him, I have a very hard time believing that it will pan out any differently than the Mac Jones pick. And that being said, I think that Drake Maye has a much higher ceiling than Mac Jones does, but it takes a level of commitment from the front office to actually be able to not just take the quarterback and hope things pan out, but build a roster that is conducive to the development of that first-round quarterback. And that's a little bit of the lesson that the Patriots seem to be learning these past few years, really, but especially, with this new iteration of what the Patriots look like, and now especially so post-Bill Belichick. But, I think that it is very fair to question their offseason strategy a little bit because, there are some different numbers that were thrown out from training camp. I saw a tweet that Drake Maye was sacked 5 of his last 6 dropbacks to close training camp yesterday against the Eagles. And again, a couple different factors that play into that. I'm sure that the receivers, it sounds like they're still not getting that much separation in camp this year, but the offensive line is a disaster. And it's why you see all of these other rookie quarterbacks who were able to get significant playing time during their preseason games over the past, weekend or so. And Drake Maye only got one drive. And the Patriots didn't even really let him do all that much on that drive anyways. 6 plays, only 3 dropbacks, a play action pass, a screen, and a check down. So it was pretty much nothing you could get out of that experience. And again, I understand to some degree the offensive line is such a mess, especially the weather last Thursday in New England was horrible, so it was raining very hard, and I think that definitely impacted maybe the freedom that the Patriots were going to let Maye play with. We saw Jacoby Brissett struggling in that game as well for the one drive that he got. He reportedly hasn't looked all that great either up to this point in camp. But I think that ultimately when you look at how the Patriots sort of went about this past offseason, it's an interesting sort of conversation as to did they take the right strategy. I was pretty adamant that you take a swing at the quarterback because you sort of have to at this point for New England. But, part of that decision does come with the fact that you understand there's still a lot that needs to be done outside of just that quarterback position. And if you look at their draft strategy, it was Drake Maye in the first round, drafting a wide receiver and Jalen Polk in the second round. Next 2 picks were offensive linemen, and then it was another receiver in Javon Baker. So their first 5 picks were all on the offensive side of the ball. So at least there is an understanding there, as opposed to you go to Belichick's last draft for the Patriots in 2023, and he was just so stubborn about surrounding Mac Jones and that offense, replenishing them with talent, that he instead chose to go defensive heavy. And that's why they're a little bit in this hole, is because the roster construction philosophy for the Patriots the past few years just has not been good enough. And that's why you now look at, again, I stand by them going after Drake Maye at that number 3 spot. You only get up there so often. The Patriots haven't been that high in a draft in as long as I've been watching football at 23 years old. So you take a swing. If it misses, that's unfortunate, but at the same time, again, you kind of have to take the shot, because we know that such a high percentage of quarterbacks end up busting anyways, that you have to take your swings when you can at legitimate options, as opposed to in 2021 just sort of waiting around and seeing who's available when you are on the clock, which is how the Pats ended up with Mac Jones in 2021, taking him 15th overall. So again, I think that their draft strategy was fine this year, but it's just the fact that they didn't do anything really to address the offensive line situation. And that's why we see Brissett and Maye constantly under duress in these practices, and they just haven't really done all that much to, improve it. But that being said, what's stopping them from making the moves now? Obviously, we are in preseason, and at this point, there aren't free agents available necessarily that are going to be improvements, but there's still time to be able to, you're probably picking up along the margins, but it's training camp. If there are players that aren't necessarily poised to be in starting position on other teams, I would take some swings at probably lower priced offensive linemen now available, because you didn't do anything in free agency to address the offensive line, which I can somewhat understand. I mean, they re-signed Michael Onwenu, who is probably one of their 2 overall net positive offensive linemen. Him and David Andrews really are the 2, but you know, there were some notable guards, especially, that were in free agency, but overall, it wasn't all that strong of a class, anyways. And nothing really at offensive tackle, which is a huge, huge need for them. So I think that at this point, yeah, if you're trading for some lower end guys, it doesn't make you feel great about it. That's kind of when they ended up with Chukwuma Okorafor, who they got from Pittsburgh over the offseason. That, you know, Okorafor, is he going to be great for them? Probably not, but honestly, anything that they have now after the, Vidarian Lows and Antonio Maffis and just having such incompetence at the offensive line, frankly, for the past couple of years, that I think they kind of just have to take some shots. And obviously with the Patriots, eventually receiver is going to, it still is a position of need, but I really don't view it as the number one priority and need at this point. Because at this point, I'm not sure that any Patriots quarterback can drop back and have, 2.5 seconds to even read a field and try and hit somebody downfield before they're getting hit. And I think that the Patriots just have a lot of work. The more stories that are coming out, and I understand this is a long-term process for the Patriots. It was never going to be all the answers in year one, but the more I'm hearing from them, the more pessimistic I am becoming about the Patriots' upcoming season. And for whatever it's worth, now they at least have an idea of the quarterback answer in the building. So it's not like they have to tank necessarily and try for the best possible draft position. But at the same time, there's just the difference, especially between them and their own division with teams like the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Jets. There's a large margin that they have to make up for in terms of talent on the roster that Patriots are probably a good few years away from, really being competitive again. And that being said, I do think that they have a number of very impressive players on their defense and that Drake Maye is going to coach them to be a good defense. But with the Patriots, the story the past few years has been that the offense has been incompetent. And that's where they need to improve if they ever want to start winning football games consistently again. And doesn't really feel like this is going to be the year. But again, this wasn't supposed to be the year. So, I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Again, I don't want to be too harsh because this was always sort of the plan, that it was going to be a little bit of a rebuild here. But very messy from what it sounds like in camp so far, and I'm not very optimistic that the Patriots offense is going to be all that much improved this upcoming season. But time will tell there. But we are now going to be diving into some of the contract holdout situations, and we're talking about the Patriots right now. We're going to be sticking in the AFC East and talking about the New York Jets, who just in March decided to trade for Hassan Reddick to beef up that defense a little bit. He came in for one meeting and he is yet to return to the Jets facility and has now requested a trade. So a very messy situation going down in New York. We will be breaking down all of the drama there and whether or not the Jets will be able to come to an agreement with him. But first, we have to take a quick break. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.